Modern society never existed to a point where there weren't jobs. Your parents, uncles, cousins, or even grandparents are probably part of the Earth's workforce population of 4 billion people. Our modern society has become efficient in specialized labor and made people more skilled in what they are doing, from countless hours being spent on educating ourselves and more spent on doing repetitive tasks. We eventually gain what we call experience, from us recording down our progress from a plain sheet, to eventually becoming one of the best of our race as we constantly improve ourselves. You probably want to get checked up with renowned doctors for medication, but why is that? Why do we trust these certain people to assist us? It's a no-brainer to most people. Of course, it's through their knowledge, experience, education, or skills that make them so much more qualified in what they're doing. Certainly, you wouldn't let your friend do your kidney transplant. Their expertise in their respective fields gives us more trust in them to do something we simply aren't that good at. But even the best of humanity are far from perfect in what they're doing. Just from the year 2016, an estimate of 250,000 cases of medical errors from 35.5 million hospitalization records caused deaths in the US alone. This was caused by many human errors ranging from misdiagnosis, insufficient experience, surgical mistakes, and of course, the classic doctor handwriting that looks more like an alien language. This is the shortcoming of humans. Although we are capable of amazing things, we are often restricted by our physical capabilities. This is where expert systems come in. Expert systems are one of the first truly successful forms of AI aimed to assist the shortcomings of experts in professional fields such as the medical and legal fields. It's used as a support to emulate the decision-making process of a human expert to solve complex problems. Humans can only do so much before they meet their limits. Just using the example of a doctor's diagnosis, the understanding of every disease and the relationships between the symptoms and the ability to perfectly and accurately diagnose the patient is beyond human capabilities. An expert system has a great amount of information. It knows every symptom of known diseases, details of the disease, and by utilizing such an expert system, medical errors won't occur as frequently, which significantly lowers the amount of deaths caused by such errors. So, how does it work? An expert system is an extremely sophisticated form of AI and would take longer than this video to fully explain. So I'll start by explaining the basics. The system is dissected into 4 essential components: the knowledge base, the inference engine, the explanatory mechanism, and the knowledge acquisition system, along with an user interface for the user to interact with. So, the process starts here in the knowledge base, where the information is stored in facts and rules set normally in a series of if-then statements. The data from the knowledge base are inputted by experts or programmers into the system, or automatically integrated from the inference engine, likely under the assistance of a knowledge engineer. The knowledge can be separated into 2 main categories: factual and heuristic. Factual knowledge are knowledge widely shared. For example, any patients with a body temperature more than 38 degrees Celsius are having a fever, while heuristic knowledge are more experimental and are based mostly on experience gathered from experts. A good example would be that if spots are found on a patient's body, it may likely be an infection of the smallpox virus. The knowledge acquisition element automatically acquires information from the user to aid in identifying a solution about the particular case. In this example, information including temperature or blood pressure will be measured so as to have a better understanding. Inspection of the patient would also be done to identify the symptoms. The inference engine then interacts with the knowledge base, applying the facts and rules to determine a solution to the question being asked by the user and responds as soon as possible. This can be done in 2 different methods: forward chaining and backward chaining. Forward chaining expert system works in a more linear way. The system would gather information from the user and communicate with the knowledge base through if-then statements, until sufficient evidences are collected to conclude an outcome through the method of elimination. This process is relatively suitable for diagnosis and classification. Backward chaining works in a less straightforward way. Instead of finding a conclusion through existing facts, the system would look at possible conclusions and work backwards to collect evidences that would support that particular conclusion over the rest of them. This method is partially used in planning or problem solving. Let's use a case study. A patient visits a doctor which uses an expert system to aid him in identifying the disease that the patient is suffering. The doctor records what the patient is feeling. For example, the patient may be feeling pain around multiple body parts and discomfort while suffering from severe coughing. This information is entered into the expert system. Finally, after a conclusion has been reached by the expert system, the system has calculated the patient is suffering from acute sinusitis. But the process does not simply end here. The information will then travel to the explanatory system to justify the output of the expert system through reasoning and presenting data flow of the system that led to that certain conclusion. Here, the condition was concluded because the patient had been swelling, had nasal congestion, and fever, which are major symptoms shared by acute sinusitis. The solution of the question inputted would then be transferred back to the interface, and the doctor will find out the condition in which the patient was suffering from with explanations of how the conclusion was obtained. The doctor is then provided the patient with medication suggested by the expert system. An expert system has a large memory, something we wish we had on the eve of the exams, but is something we can never increase. But for a computer, it's as easy as inserting a metal slab. Experts are great, but they still need a mainly library of reference books behind them. For expert systems, their library of knowledge is part of their system, outmatching not only on the sheer volume of memory, but also on the time taken to access the knowledge. Emotions tend to mess up our long, carefully planned decisions. So why don't we get rid of it? It turns out that humans are at least rational enough to make applications fully on logic, rather than making the system evaluate romantic relationships when tasked with a medical diagnosis. The power of a fully logical program is that it can provide a rational explanation along with the answer, making the answer at least seem more convincing as long as it's processing factual knowledge. With the same knowledge base, the system will provide the same answer with the same explanation. Unlike an expert who will ask you to shut up if you ask him the same question for 100 times. Experts' precious knowledge can only be taped into one at a time and at only one location, which then have to be expressed through the mouth or by writing. But compared to the flexible user interface, which can be accessed by most PCs by multiple people 24/7, the program surely trumps over the ape-derived counterpart. There is plenty to say about the advantages of expert systems, but why isn't it so widely used? Well, I doubt you, the viewer, has even heard of the word before. Well, simply put, the development cost of an expert system isn't quite worth its functionality. Even though expert systems are considered an artificial intelligence, it just isn't as fluid as it seems. They lack the flexibility and ability to adapt to changing environments, nor is it easy to automate such complex processes, making them inefficient compared to how much it costs to maintain and to constantly input new information into the system. In the case of the medical field, an expert system is simply a pre-programmed software with rules that allow them to aid people, but they don't have the creativity that human experts are capable of to solve problems, making potentially treatable patients to be classified as untreatable or at least unknown. Common sense is also a major part of a human expert, which expert systems does not have. While they are extremely knowledgeable, but simple logical things that is not in its knowledge base could potentially cause them to give irregular responses that defies all logic. For example, they might tell a person suffering from hypothermia to use an ice pack. Without the constant input of knowledge, even an expert system can act like a child, without knowing how some physical properties interact. The future of expert systems seems to be bright with the advancements in artificial intelligence and machine learning in recent years. Some of the greatest flaws of an expert system can be finally resolved. Watson, developed by IBM, is one of the many examples of the new era of expert systems that throw all the setbacks out the window. It is flexible to change according to its environment, and the integration of its vast knowledge base is constantly renewed, making it more efficient and rapidly lowers the cost due to its multi-purpose functionality, making them a new batch of better expert systems.